people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Fighters promotional companies are soulless businesses that actually don't really exist. What they really want is they want their name or their logo or their business on the backdrop. They want a little bit of involvement in the show, but they want to take no financial risk of the show at all. And it's like when you're negotiating a purse, it could be Devin, could be someone else, and they say, oh, I want this. I said, no, that's like, here's the P&L from the show. Right? This is the money in the show. Well, I don't care what's in there. I want that much. Okay, well, if you want, we'll do the show together. And if it doesn't hit the numbers that you want, we'll go 50-50 on the losses. Because you're co-promoter, right? Devin Haney Promotion. No, so you're not really a co-promoter. If you want to be a player in the game and you back yourself, you got to bid in that instance. Why do you not want to bid? Because you know the show's going to lose a couple of $1 million. So what, we expected to do a fight that no one wants to see, just so you can get paid. It doesn't work like that unless we have a contractual obligation.
Oh, we've had this conversation here on this channel plenty of times, and if you've been with the channel long enough, you will have heard me say that many of these fighters that fancy themselves promoters with their own little promotional outfits are only promoters in name.
In title.
They're not doing any actual promoting. They themselves are not actual promoters. It's tantamount to a play phone that you would give a child. The phone itself does not perform any of the functions of an actual phone, the way these fighters don't perform any of the functions of an actual promoter. Their promotional companies are not companies at all. What am I talking about? I'm talking about GTD, DHP, Man Down Promotions, Lions Only Promotions. These are not real promotional companies.
Way it is.
Being a promoter involves doing your own shows, having your own stable of fighters, and doing shows for those fighters. It's not to say that a fighter never actually successfully became a promoter. Oscar De La Hoya did, quite famously. Floyd Mayweather did.
But when you talk about Gervonta, when you talk about Devin, Errol, the Charlo brothers, those guys are not promoters. Their companies are not real promotional companies. Why?
Well, like I said, being a promoter entails doing your own shows, having your own stable of fighters to do shows for.
Well, doesn't Errol Spence promote Frank Martin?
Well, if you're not paying attention, you might think he promotes Frank Martin, when really he's acting as more of a manager to Frank Martin than a promoter, because as far as promoting and promotion, that guy fights under the PBC banner.
The money to pay him.
It comes from the PBC, and the platforms that he's fights on, are platforms that have deals with the PBC.
What are you talking about? Showtime? Amazon?
It's the PBC that brokered those broadcast deals, not Errol Spence Jr. himself, and not Man Down Promotions. Those are not Man Down shows. They're PBC shows.
The Skinny.
These are not promotional outfits like, say, Top Rank is a promotional outfit with an ESPN deal, or Matchroom and Golden Boy are promotional outfits with a DAZN deal. Boxer is a promotional outfit with a Sky Sports deal. Queensberry is a promotional outfit with a TNT deal. These deals, these are their broadcast partners. The money to do shows throughout the calendar year comes from the broadcaster, given to the promoter.
Why?
The broadcaster gives that promoter a budget in the hopes that they will create content that draws eyes to their platform.
It's an exchange.
A relationship. That platform is giving that promoter money in the hopes that the shows and the fights that they put on draw viewership to their platform.
Subscribers.
And people that'll buy a pay-per-view. So in that sense, a GTD, a DHP, a Man Down, or a Lions Only, they don't have that kind of a relationship with any broadcaster. No, they fall under an umbrella.
The money to do their shows doesn't come from them or any relationship they have with a broadcaster.
The money to do Devin Haney's last fight with Ryan Garcia, that didn't come from Devin. That came from Golden Boy.
Via DAZN.
Fight before that with Regis Prograrius. The money to do that came from Matchroom.
Via DAZN.
And before that, the Vasyl Lomachenko fight, the George Cambodia fights, that came from Top Rank
Via ESPN.
all the resources and the money to make it happen, to pay the fighters, promote the show, the advertisements, the featurettes, the posters.
None of that came from Devin.
So then what you have to ask yourself is, in what regard is Devin Haney a promoter when so much is being left to someone else to do, someone else to promote? Same with Gervonta Davis and GTD, same with Errol Spence and Man Down, same with the Charlos and Lions Only. What shows do you guys do?
When?
You brokered what deal with what platform?
Where?
These fighters are only promoters to the extent that they may have their quote-unquote companies insignia on the bottom portion of a poster.
But you don't do any actual promoting because it requires a skill set you don't have.
And it is a skill. A network may give you a budget to do shows throughout the calendar year, but how that money is dispersed, what amount for what shows, and what makes sense, the projected sales
How much should you spend?
on a fighter, on a fight, a comprehensive schedule of fights throughout the 12 months in a calendar year.
It's a skill set these guys don't have.
So then you ask yourself, why are they calling themselves promoters then? What's the point in all of this? I don't know, maybe it's a flex?
Look at me, I'm a promoter too.
Sure you are. What I've likened it to in the past is how a lot of rappers in the late 90s and early 2000s claimed to have had their own record labels signing their own artists, when in reality, you were just subsidiaries and dummy companies for bigger labels.
But if it makes you feel better to say you have your own, have at 'em, cowboy.
They're cosplaying promoters if they're doing anything. They're cosplaying promotional outfits and what promoters actually do, what that actually entails.
It's pretend. It's make-believe.
Any money they make from a show, they're not putting it up themselves. Somebody else is putting it up.
It's like Eddie Hearn said. They're not going to stake their own money on a show that might lose money.
And putting on a show is expensive, by the way. Just getting all of that done.
More to the point, a lot of these fighters that like to call themselves promoters with their promotional companies, they're not actually promoters.
They're not promoting anything. They don't even really promote themselves.
Press conference. What'd you think of that? He couldn't keep your eyes off you.
Oh yeah, he was trying to intimidate me doing his acting, but I figured out really quickly to set on he's just an actor.
There are a number of fighters who, when we ask him that question, have you watched video of him? What do you know about him? And many of them said, no, I haven't really seen, I don't watch any video. When his name popped up to be your opponent to defend his title, it's Norer, I think it's pronounced Mikaelian. He comes from Armenia. What can you tell us that you know about him?
From what I know about him, I kind of looked into his whole life a little bit, because when I'm studying an opponent, I don't just watch the boxing part of it. I like to know who I'm fighting. I like to know where they come from, how they started, what they're about, who they are, like their character.
Wow.
Right
That's
to
very
the core.
interesting.
So because I know where I came from and I know the kind of life I had, how I got here. So if I know that if I'm going up against someone who, let's say, had a little bit more of a privileged life, or maybe didn't have a road as tough as I had, well, I know mentally I'm willing to go darker places than he is, so
Wow.
that's the first thing I figure out about my opponent. And then from there, it's just the fine little details, because with me, it only takes one shot. So I got 12 rounds to land one shot and the fight's going to be over. So all I need is one mistake, and that's it.
That was Ryan Rozicki, very intense individual, intense fighter from Nova Scotia, ahead of his upcoming WBC Cruiserweight title fight with reigning champion Noel Mikaelian, otherwise known as Noel Gavor.
What?
So they were supposed to have initially met on the undercard of Adrian Bronor versus Blair Cobbs, a Don King promotion, but Noel was said to have suffered a cut, and the fight got pushed back and postponed to late next month.
I didn't really believe that Noel was cut. I thought he was sandbagging it to see what other money he can make fighting someone else, perhaps in a unification match. I don't think it was an accident that he ended up in the UK on Sky Sports to call out Chris Billum Smith.
Because in between the time that the fight with Ryan got postponed and now, that's what Noel did. He started calling out another guy, a champion at the weight. So I didn't really think this fight was going to happen, get rescheduled, but
it did.
Ryan is 29 years old, whereas Noel is a little older at 34, sporting a professional record of 27 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 12 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 29 professional bouts. He's a tough guy.
But he doesn't like Ryan's tough man act. At least in his opinion, it's an act. He's trying to be intense, intimidating.
Sporting a professional record of 20 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 19 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 21 professional bouts. Ryan really wanted this fight.
He's got it.
Having last seen action in December of last year opposite the ring, the hard-punching Zurdo, a veteran at this weight who's been in there with a lot of guys, a lot of good fighters. Ryan saw action about 4 times last year, 4 times. A busy schedule.
He had 4 fights, he won 4 fights, and won all 4 by way of knockout. Ryan is best described as a bruiser, a brawler, a pressure fighter, a mid-range to inside guy that throws every punch with bad intentions.
Whereas Noel Mikaelian is a bit more cerebral, more the boxer, having last seen action in November of last year opposite the ring, then champion Lunga Makabu. Lunga was the WBC champion going in. Noel became the WBC champion going out. But that's the only fight that he had last year. He wasn't as busy as Ryan Rozicki.
And in a very general sense, in the last calendar year, the last 2 years, Noel has not been as busy as Ryan Rozicki. Ryan's kept a good schedule of activity. That means the night of, he's going to be sharp.
What you need to know.
Noel Gavor is of the opinion that Ryan is an actor, and it's all an act, a tough man act.
But I don't think he was acting when he took on Oscar Rivas as a late replacement for what was the inaugural WBC Bridgerweight title. Remember, Ryan is really a cruiserweight. He had to move up in weight for this fight, and the punches that he took, what he endured in that fight.
Also remember that Oscar Rivas, for the most part, is a full-fledged heavyweight.
It's where he's been most of his professional boxing career. He only moved down for the opportunity to become the WBC's first Bridgerweight champion. He's a full-fledged heavyweight with heavyweight durability, heavyweight power, and Ryan was able to hang in there and hang on.
Give as good as he got.
Because he got in there with some good punches, solid punches, meaty punches that I don't think a cruiserweight would have been able to absorb. But he was in there with a heavyweight.
And a former Olympian. Oscar Rivas was a former Olympian. Good fighter.
It was a good fight. And if you wanted to know more about Ryan and what he's really made of, more than anything he could tell you, that fight showed it. This guy's tough. He's got a solid chin. He can take a shot, and he can certainly give one.
You don't want to sit in the pocket with this guy.
And you don't want to trade with him, as that is his area of expertise. He's a mid-range to inside pressure fighter, volume puncher. He wants to go, he wants to throw. If you oblige him, you might find out how tough he is and how tough you're not.
So he lost the Rivas fight on points. He didn't get stopped. He didn't get dropped. And since then, he's amassed a string of victories, a string of knockout victories. He's fought 7 times since then, won 7 fights since then. 4 of them were last year, and he won all 4 by way of knockout. So I think his toughness, his durability is real. I think his power is real. And I don't think it's an act. I think Ryan means business.
If Noel Gavor wishes to stay WBC champion, he better stay out of the pocket. He better stay on his toes and move around. That's Ryan's only Achilles heel. Movement.
Moving is Noel's best bet.
Noel is the house fighter. He's the Don King fighter. So if he's still standing at the end of it, there's a chance we could see a dodgy decision. There is a chance. However, Ryan's not coming for a points decision. He's not coming for a points win. He's coming to stop Noel.
He knows what he's up against.
Is he going to, though? We'll find out late next month, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the cruiserweight division, per veteran boxing scribe Dake Jonovan, huge day for the purse bid heads. Zurdo, Ramirez, and Dorticos failed to reach an agreement. WBA cruiserweight bout now heads to August 27th purse bid. That said, I fully expect no fewer than 2 postponements and an eventual outright cancellation. It seems that Jake is less than optimistic about this fight.
What's interesting?
Whatever Golden Boy Promotions must have offered Dorticos for this fight must not have been to his liking, and thus they were unable to reach an agreement. The issue is that Uniel isn't with a major promotional outfit.
What's he waiting for? For somebody to step in and counter the offer from Golden Boy?
Golden Boy are likely the only ones that are going to put up any money for this fight, any money to do it, because they are invested in Zurdo Ramirez, WBA Cruiserweight Champion, but who's invested in Uniel? So if it goes to a purse bid and they don't reach a deal by the 27th, in all likelihood, Golden Boy will be the sole bidder for the show.
Oh.
And so, we haven't seen a whole lot of Uniel Dorticos, otherwise known as El KO Doctor, in the subsequent years that have followed the second season of the World Boxing Super Series. Uniel fought in both seasons of it, the first season and the second.
He lost both times.
Suffered his first professional loss and a knockout loss to Russia's own Murat Gassiev in the first season, and he was thoroughly dominated inside and out in the second season by Latvia's Ramirez. But he's still a formidable fighter, still a very hard puncher, the hardest that Zurdo will have fought since moving up to cruiserweight. Uniel has been popping up here and there sparsely the last 4 or 5 years. He fought once in 2020, once in 2021, once in 2022. Didn't fight at all last year, but he has seen action once, this one, back in June. A knockout victory over Alan Campa.
He's on a 3-fight winning streak, and he won all 3 fights by way of knockout.
Been in there with a who's who of formidable fighters at cruiserweight. The Russian Hammer, Dmitry Kuzryazov, Matthias Masternak, back when he was a younger man, former champion Murat Gassiev, Andrew Tabiti, Ramirez.
This might turn out to be a more dangerous and difficult fight for Zurdo than his last fight was. His fight with then champion Arsen Goulamarian, unbeaten going in,
beaten going out. I would say that punch for punch, Uniel Dorticos is a far more devastating puncher than Arsen Goulamarian ever was. But his Achilles heel is he needs room to get the arm out.
Get the punch out.
Mid-range to inside, he's vulnerable. He can be smothered there, he can be outworked there. That's how Murat Gassiev beat him, by crowding him mid-range to inside where those long arms of his don't do him any favors. He needs room to get the arm out.
Can Zurdo do that?
Well, Zurdo really isn't the puncher that Murat Gassiev was, or the puncher that Ramirez was, that Ramirez is. No, Zurdo's not as devastating a puncher as those guys are. He's formidable, he's experienced, and he's added some tools to his repertoire, but I can't say that he's a fighter that has all that much stopping power.
Not a knockout merchant.
Now, least of all, that he's up there with those cruiserweights, those bona fide cruiserweights, those big men.
It's interesting.
This could be a very interesting fight, a very interesting experience for the newly crowned WBA champion, Zurdo Ramirez. I like the fight if they can make it, though I question whether or not they will, because if this goes to a purse bid and Uniel still doesn't like the money, what's on the table?
The whole reason it's going to a purse bid is because they didn't reach a deal. I can only deduce that Uniel didn't like the money. And if he still doesn't like what's on the table, if he still doesn't like the money after the purse bid, he might walk away. The title shot might go to someone else.
Maybe that's what Golden Boy Promotions wants. Maybe underneath it all, this is all a ploy to get that guy to go away because he's too dangerous.
Punches too hard.
A clandestine way to sabotage the fight so it never sees the light of day. Offer this guy money he won't take.
So you don't have to fight him.
Tell you what, nothing would surprise me.